All right, everybody, it's Monday. Welcome back. Nothing has slowed down, and it will not for the duration of your lifetimes.
Ye, the artist formerly known as Kanye West, has agreed in principle to buy Parler, one of the alternative Twitter clones. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Kanye West's, Ye's mental breakdown. And I have some strong feelings about the media, social media, predators, and Molly and I have a really deep discussion about what to do in those cases and what's happening with Kanye/Ye at this moment in time.
Yep.
Delicate discussion.
It's a delicate discussion, and obviously one that we could not opt out of. Similarly, we have to keep our eyes on China, and we are. We're breaking down some huge public comments from Xi Jinping, the president of China, some fallout from the U.S.'s decision to tighten restrictions on chip exports to China, and just like what's happening geopolitically as we unwind globalism. It's kind of a big moment that we're in historically.
Yeah, globalization being and the great decoupling. Yes. Yeah. And then we wrap with two very cool stories. We have the startup of the day from the creator of TBH, a new app that is basically like your yearbook, who's most likely to succeed, but done in a very positive, still anonymous way. It's a very beautiful product. And we talk about the dangers of anonymity plus teenagers plus online.
And then we have a We Live in the Future startup called Spinlaunch that flings satellites into low Earth orbit using centrifugal force and really high Gs. And we talk about both of those in the context of whether we would invest some tactical information for you.
Yes, it's going to be a great show.
Stick with us.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. A business is only as strong as its people, and every hire matters. Post your first job for free at linkedin.com/twist. Notion is one place for notes, docs, projects, and everyday work that goes way beyond a wiki. Get started for free at notion.com, and Helpware helps you outsource the tasks that slow your team down. From data entry to world-class customer support, Helpware can help make you bionic. Go to helpware.com/twist to get $1,000 off your first invoice.
So this breaking news alert came across my phone, I think last night as I was about to go to sleep.
Oh.
And then that was the moment that I was like, and good night. Like I just was like, nope, I'm just putting that away. And then I woke up this morning at 6:30 and it seemed to still be true. So then I was like, maybe I'm just going to stay in bed all day, but I didn't. I dragged myself out so that we could talk about the possibility that has so far been announced via press release that Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, has agreed to purchase the free speech focused social app Parler.
Okay.
Now I want to stop talking.
All right. Well, no. I just want to start there for a second. I didn't know Parler was still going. So exactly. Kanye West, who does not want, I understand, doesn't want people to refer to him as Kanye West anymore, wants to be called Ye.
I guess so. Mm-hmm.
Which, okay, fine. It's going to take a little while for that.
I mean, we could also just not do that. We don't have to.
Well,
it's not a law.
I mean,
I'm just
I
saying
want to
it's not a law.
People's names, I guess. I mean, it doesn't cost me that much, but I mean,
he is currently
just so
going
people know.
by Ye.
Okay, I'm going to say the artist formerly known as Kanye West referring to himself as Ye for, 3 months, just until everybody understands that this change has occurred.
Because if you just throw like Ye into a sentence, it's really confusing.
Yay. Yeah, exactly. It's like people think you say, yay.
Okay. Anyway, so yes.
So Parler's still in business. That was the most shocking part of this story, is that Parler still exists.
Shocking to many. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So Parler, so people know, is a clunky version of Twitter that was designed at some point, raised a bunch of funding. It was like 2018. And this was because I guess Trump hadn't been thrown off of Twitter yet. But this was when Parler, I guess, Milo Yiannopoulos and some other folks had been thrown off of Twitter.
Right.
So the early deplatforming of, people, I guess, spurred this site. And then there was, what's the other one? Truth Social is Trump's.
Truth Social is the newer one. And then there's Gab.
Gab was like the really gnarly one.
Right.
That used the Pepe the Frog meme. That was like pure trolling. And then there's Rumble, which is
there's Rumble,
the right version of YouTube.
The video one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there is Locals, which is like subscriptions for people, right-leaning people like the Dilbert creator, Scott Adams.
Interestingly, this move is coming obviously right after Twitter and Instagram locked Ye's accounts because of the series of anti-Semitic posts. Then he was actually spotted not that long ago, just for context, with Candace Owens, who's like a right-wing provocateur.
Yes.
In these White Lives Matter t-shirts.
Yes.
And of note, listen, I'm just trying to get the facts out here.
It, yeah.
Woo. But of note, Candace Owens' husband is the CEO of Parler.
Got it.
And Parler has been, it has gone invisible, right? Like it is moribund at best. It seems to have had like an initial bump in popularity when it first launched and does not seem to be super active. So certainly there are those people who are saying this is a very, successful predatory success on the part of this family who just got a big old rescue for their platform.
I wonder how much of the 56 they blew through.
Yeah, I don't know. He was, by the way, though, Kanye joined really early. He was one of the early people to jump on this platform. Like he got on it in 2018. It was like, him and Candace Owens and like some super right-wing senator whose name I can't think of right now. So he's been kicking around. We know he's been sort of kicking around this universe for a while. Yep. But lately has been, I think he recently said that. He said that. I think this is a bro deal. I think this is a fire sale. Yeah. There are definitely people on Twitter saying it's really predatory. Like here he is in what seems to be the middle of a pretty public collapse again. And, these people are like, hey, buy my thing.
So I have some strong feelings about this issue with Kanye specifically. Ye. He has been very upfront about mental illness. His partners in the past have been, and a little typo there, it's predatory and sucks. I basically just said, listen, when somebody's having a mental breakdown, and we saw this with a number of celebrities over the years, we have social media, which for a person having a mental episode is kerosene. This is, a way for a mind that is having a mental breakdown, when your mind is broken at that moment in time. Social media and the media are kerosene, on this fire. It's an accelerant, and it's really unhealthy because you get a ton of feedback. And then the feedback feeds whatever, and listen, I was a psychology major. I'm no expert on, a lot of these things, but I would say I'm well-versed. So, and I'm not going to diagnose any specific celebrity here, and I'm not going to talk about the other instances of celebrities having this happen, but we know them because they come back and say, I am sorry, I had a mental instance. There needs to be people around people who have these issues, kind of like a pause button. And I really think the media get very excited about having a celebrity specifically. So when you take mental illness, celebrity, social media, and the predatory media, I'm not talking about all media. I'm talking specifically about
Americans' obsessions with celebrity, right? Like we have this gross celebrity culture. We're obsessed with it.
Of course, which is fine. And celebrities opt into that. And it's a transaction. I totally get it. Some celebrities, create these kind of breakdowns in order to get more attention, to promote something. And so there's all kinds of using going on here. But when I saw Tucker interviewing Kanye last week, then I saw Kanye release this 30-minute video, which was completely brilliant at times, but at other times, it was completely disturbing behavior, and I shared it in our group chat. He did like a 30-minute video, which was super creative, him going through areas of Japan, doing like a video game kind of motif, like recreation of a video game with him as the star of it. It was brilliant. But then he was like meeting with Adidas executives in this like attacking way, forcing them to watch porn videos. It was really nuts. And you really got the sense like, oh my God, somebody needs to stop this person. And I think this is, why certain people maybe remove themselves from the orbit of Kanye. I really question the media. And then somebody else did a 3-hour interview with him, a YouTuber. I get it. Yeah. It's a big deal to get Kanye West on your pod. It's a big deal to get Kanye West on your news program. I would love to have Kanye West here and interview him about entrepreneurship. I'd love to interview Kim Kardashian. Pick the person, but I would not do it when they were having a mental breakdown. I wouldn't. Yep. Or if I did and I didn't know they were having a mental breakdown and they had a breakdown on the show, I would clip that part and not air it. Because this is really damaging to the person. Where is the just basic human empathy for a human being having a mental breakdown? And that's the big problem I have with this. Now, I don't know the social media companies can remotely diagnose a person having a mental breakdown and turn their account off.
Well, they did. Yeah. Like, here are the two parts that I would add to that.
Okay, please, yes. Sorry, I just very passionate about this.
Yeah, no, and I think you're 100% right. And I will only add to those points that two things have happened. One, in the midst of what appears to be a break, like a mental health episode, Kanye tweeted, Ye tweeted profoundly anti-Semitic stuff and some other terrible things. And
with a horrible typo in it.
With a horrible typo in it. And Twitter locked the account. Right? Like, this is now, did they do it to protect Ye? No. But did they do it to protect a community from these hateful things Jewish that he's saying in the midst of this? Yeah. I mean, look.
Crazy anti-Semitic stuff.
My family is Jewish.
Yeah.
Like, my ex-husband, my child is Jewish. Like, this is not acceptable to me.
No,
like, you want to know the day that I returned the lease on that car?
Yeah.
It was that meme.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't want to cross our red line, but like, that is really
I understand. It's
bad.
Understandable.
So it's terrible. However, so then Twitter comes in and locks his account. So, but then you have wealth, right? You have these sort of factors that make this that go from like a small fire burning to a bomb. Because then you have somebody who's ostensibly worth $2 billion. You have predators circling.
Yep.
And you have people who are like, where you could say whatever you want is our platform if you buy it. That, by the way, is probably on the verge of bankruptcy. That raised like $56 million. And then the last round was a $16 million Series B. And we don't really know what state it's in, but it does not seem to be gathering the attention that it once did. And then all of a sudden you turn that smoldering fire into something potentially really dangerous.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You had the vector of great wealth with great celebrity, with mental illness, with predatory individuals. Who knows if the people at Parler are predatory or not? It sure seems like a crazy thing to do, to go into a major transaction with somebody who's having a mental breakdown, clearly. And, I shout out to LeBron James. I have my problems with LeBron James stemming from him not becoming a Knick during the decision. And crying every time he gets fouled while being the world's best player.
My eye! It's always the eye.
But, and LeBron didn't do the interview, but it's his show, I believe. He's got the show The Shop, and they chop it up in a barbershop kind of thing. It's a really cool show, actually. I've seen a couple episodes. And Kanye was on it. You know what they did with the interview, Molly? Because he went on a couple tirades. You know what they did with it?
Yeah.
Delete. They dragged it right to the garbage can.
Circular file. Yeah.
That's it. That's the right thing to do. But Tucker Carlson wants to, and then I think there is another vector. We talked about the celebrity vector. We talked about social media. We talked about money, and we talked about media. Okay, so there's multiple vectors here. Here's another one. Partisan politics. And I think for people on the right to get somebody who's highly influential in the African-American community, in the Black community, to then leverage them with, to get them on their side and to get them to wear a White Lives Matter shirt. This is also using the person during a mental breakdown. I don't know Kanye's exact politics. I think he, supported Trump. So maybe he is right leaning, and that's fine if that's what he truly believes. But during a mental breakdown, to grab people and use them as a pawn, it's just, the whole thing is so sad. And
it's a really sad situation. And I do think that when you combine it then with the ability and means to own communications platforms, it's real messy, right? It just gets real messy. And if the reason for that is just now we're straying into the danger zone, but if the reason for that is just ideological and or in this case specifically partisan, it's not going to change Parler. But
it's all
just
going back to the same place.
Messy, sad situation.
There are people in the world who use people. And when somebody has a mental breakdown and they're vulnerable like this, you get to see who likes to use people. And you just keep a list in your mind mentally of who is attaching themselves to Kanye at this moment. Yeah. I just am cataloging it. Here are people. And I know some friends of his. I've got because he has dabbled in the, like many artists, he's made friends with I know a dozen people who know him. And, he has really wonderful ideas. He's an incredible artist. I mean, this is all obvious.
He's a genius.
Yes. It's an artistic genius. And it's not just in one category. I mean, it's in fashion. It's in video. It's in stage production. It's in obviously music and producing, rap. He's so talented across so many different genres that of course you're going to meet with him if you're in entrepreneurial. You have to. But what I would encourage people is like, if somebody's having a mental breakdown, the first thing you have to say to the person is like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Do you need help? Do you need somebody to talk to? And knowing a lot of people in his circle, there are people who are doing that with him. And then there are a group of people who are not doing that with him, who are saying, oh, this is my window. This is my angle. I got my angle shot here. This is my chance to get in deeper with Kanye, to build a relationship with him, to build a business, to, get myself in a picture with him, or get myself in a story with him, to get myself in a video with him. This is gross. It's really
it's gross. Yeah.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business because, listen, we're living in turbulent times. So you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the most qualified elite candidates. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster, and they'll do it for free. And you can add your job and the purple hiring frame around your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. They've got tons of simple tools over there at LinkedIn Jobs to make screening questions easy so you can find the candidates who really want the jobs. And of course, they have the skills and the experience all out there on everybody's profile, people voting for what skills people have to validate that for you. I don't have to explain how awesome LinkedIn is and all these features. You know that because you're on it every day. And this is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. And did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? That's right. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/twist. That's linkedin.com/TWIST to post your first job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
I think that's really true. And it's not like this is going to have some huge impact on the social media ecosystem, right? Even if this occurs, and there's not a legal mechanism short of somebody declaring power of attorney, right? There's not a legal mechanism for anybody to say like, hey, you're not competent to make this decision right now, right? So this may happen. Who knows? It's not going to change the social media ecosystem very much. This is still going to remain a niche player in a small and very crowded field, ironically, of super right-wing platforms. What I think you're pointing out really is that the story is this poor guy needs help, and instead people are just like, this is my chance. And it's
exactly.
Gross.
It's exactly. And, he's a father, he's got kids, there's just to have some basic humanity and compassion.
And also when he has these breakdowns, he says incredibly horrible, hateful things. Like, let's not,
of course.
Like,
none of that is forgiven. None of that is forgiven. But what you would want to see here is if the person, gets control of their faculties again, they say, listen, I said these things, I'm going to take ownership for them. I'm going to atone for them. I'm going to talk to people. That would be a really nice thing to see happen as well.
Yes, totally.
But we do have a special exemption in society for people who have a mental breakdown, a path for forgiveness. And that's a process. There's a literal process for it in Alcoholics Anonymous and other things where you try to make amends. If, when you tell people, hey, here's what I did. I know how hurtful it was. And you describe what you did. And I've had people do this to me before.
Ironically, Judaism has a whole holiday devoted to it. Just happened.
Yeah. So this atonement concept is I think everybody's here for it. So I'm just wishing him the best. And to the people who are just absolute leeches, we see you. We see what you're doing. We see there's a list. I have a mental list of people I see do this kind of stuff. And I just, there's Tucker Carlson, here's Candace Owens. And then MIA, the rapper, she seems to be getting in on this. And I'm like, God, I haven't even heard from MIA for 15 years. What's going on with her? I do a quick Google search. Her new album's out, her comeback album or whatever's out. And it's like, I hate to be cynical, but she's getting no attention, I assume. I don't know if anybody here has heard about MIA. I respected her as an artiste as well. And she's spouting off crazy nonsense now and going to this meeting of the minds with Candace Owens. And of course, she's going to, I'm sure, get in on this Kanye West grift with Candace. And it's just all gross. And you can just see through it. It's just people trying to take from other people. And
it is. Yeah, and the noties are pointing out, I think somewhat rightly, he does have the means to get help and ask for help. And he is on some level, right? It is not, on some level, he is choosing not to do that too. So there's a lot happening here. And none of it is
there's
good.
also the possibility that he's not having a mental breakdown right now. He's just a horrible human being.
I mean,
who's crazy. I mean, I think
like it might be both, like kind of horrible and then breakdown just lets it out of the bag.
Yeah, that's all possible. Yeah. It does seem like when he comes back to his facilities, he apologizes for all this, right?
Does he? I don't know. Maybe.
No, he has. Yes. Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I'm sure that doesn't trend. The last
time he went crazy with Kim, he was, super repentful and apologizing. I said this, I said that.
Her, but then he stalked her and like attacked Pete. And, I mean, there was like crazy, terrible stuff happening there too. Like I don't know.
It's actually a case where you might want to, if the person is actually attacking things, that does break the social media rules on most platforms. Like he did say violent things about Pete, which, it only takes, there might be 5 violent, mentally ill Kanye West fans out there who then might do something terrible, John Lennon style, horrifically to Pete Davidson, so that you create like a real security risk for Pete Davidson, by doing that.
I think you just talked yourself into content moderation.
Well, not content moderation. I think
content moderation. I mean, that's why Twitter locked the account. That's why, I mean, at some point, it's like a rules.
Content moderation, question. Like the small subsection of content moderation that is, you say something violent and you create real harm in the world. Like exactly. I'm all there for it. All there for exactly. that subsection, right? Yeah. Content moderation is just like such a wide term, like I think maybe putting a person like him, the idea I really like for these platforms is to put people on moderation like we used to do on message boards, like listservs. I don't know if you remember this, but like certain people could post to the listserv and then other people had their content held to be reviewed.
Yes.
So now this doesn't exist in the modern era, but if somebody like, let's say Trump or Kanye, had a 1-year suspension or something and they're coming back, you could say, sure, you can tweet. Your tweets, you have to pay $1,000 a year. Delay. Yeah. And you're on a 6-hour delay and our content moderators will read it just to make sure it doesn't break anything for 6 months. If for 6 months, and you pay for this privilege of having your stuff moderated, just like somebody pays for their ankle bracelet or pays to have I think drunk drivers, right? They pay to have a device on their car they have to blow into to start the car. Like they have a breathalyzer that exists.
Breathalyzer, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a probationary period where we're going to review your content. Why doesn't that exist? That would be perfect for Trump. That would be perfect for Kanye. It would be perfect for people who are, we're trying to not give them a permanent ban from the public square. But so then put that in my list of ideas for a new owner of Twitter, if there ever is a new owner of Twitter, of a, and by the way, it's a revenue model too.
Yeah.
You're on mod. It's going to cost you $10 a day. Well, on penalty. All right. Anything else in the news?
Yeah. Let's talk about the CCP. For those who are not following this particular piece of global news, President Xi Jinping is widely expected to be elected to, I made some air quotes in case you aren't watching the video, elected to a third term. Yeah, appointed. Let's just say appointed. It's a coronation, if you will. This is the week in which she is expected to be handed a third term as president after getting rid of term limits. And so this is like, there's kind of an event happening that only happens every 5 years in China, which is the National Congress of the Communist Party of China meeting. So this is the 20th one of those meetings. And Xi Jinping gave this big speech on that obviously touches on the tech industry quite a bit. So we just have some notes in here about the major takeaways.
I am really interested in this, Molly. I was up late trying to find a translation and I'm looking for like a transcript and everything of the full thing, but it wasn't out as of yesterday. But I'm fascinated by what he said here because it is, I think, going to be pretty important, not just for the United States and the world, but startups and technologists as well in terms of how he thinks. And there is a concept that I just want to make people aware of, Xi Jinping thought. So this has been codified. I learned this weekend, is that the way he thinks, his thoughts for the people of China are becoming codified in a way. And it's sort of something you can look up now. So it's very important to, when he says something, understand this is kind of becoming doctrine. It's not like a speech, like Obama gave a speech or Trump gave a speech. It's like it goes from his thoughts into like kind of codified law. So just keep that in mind when we go through the story.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So among the major takeaways, I mean, this is sort of interesting because broadly speaking, in fact, I'll find this document. The United States also put out our 2022 national security document earlier the last week. And the similar themes around self-sufficiency. Like what we're seeing in some ways is an unwinding of globalization. And this was a big part of this speech. So, for example, President Xi focused a lot on self-sufficiency, national security, social stability. He specifically mentioned safeguarding the supply chains of food, energy, and other key products, said, quote, Chinese people must hold their rice bowls firmly in their own hands, signaling the importance of food self-sufficiency and security.
That's an evocative metaphor there. See, this is when you know somebody's really good at public discourse, is when you can make a visual that you'll never forget.
Yeah.
Hold your rice bowls firmly in your hands. You'll never forget that. Like keep a good grip on your rice bowl is a really good operating principle for a country. Well done, Xi Jinping. And whoever speechwriter for him gets it.
Bravo. He focused heavily on security over growth. So Goldman Sachs did this interesting chart on the frequency of mentions, right? Specific words that were mentioned. And they found that there was a huge growth in the mention of the word security versus growth. So
this is super telling.
Well, it's also another thing, by the way, that broke early this morning that is also super telling is that China announced this morning without explanation that it was delaying indefinitely the release of economic data that had been scheduled for Tuesday morning, including closely watched numbers for economic growth from July through September, which had been expected, I'm reading from the New York Times, to show continued lackluster performance. Reminder that China is the world's second largest economy. It's kind of a big deal when they say we're not putting out any data and forever, indefinitely.
It makes sense if things aren't going well. It's kind of like taking a company private. You know, sometimes you have a public company. We talked about this like with Zendesk.
It's a great metaphor, and things aren't analogy.
Going well. Yeah, it's like, okay, let's just take it private. We'll fix everything. And nobody needs to be giving us any scrutiny for the next 5 years while we get this thing. And you know, things could be going really well. But as I've told everybody, you know, if you participate in this country, you have to understand that it's top-down control. And if you invest in this country, they will change the rules at any given point in time, and just be careful with investments over there. It's one of the reasons I haven't invested over there. Okay, if you're a startup, you need to know about Notion. You need to sign up today. Just head to Notion.com and sign up for free right now. And write a deal memo about your company and then share it with me, Jason@calacanis.com. Really, I'll read your deal memo if you start a Notion page, because that's what a lot of founders are doing. They're writing their deal memos, they're running their companies on Notion. And at launch, we run it on Notion as well. Think about this. Notion is our all-in-one team collaboration tool. It combines note-taking, right? Like you use different note-taking apps. Document sharing. You probably have some suite of documents that you use. And then there's wikis, which you would love to use, but they're clunky and they didn't work and they're ugly. Now Notion makes wikis and that functionality beautiful. Well, imagine if all of that was in one platform that you could have templates for, and you could have everybody sign into one thing every day and find every single piece of information, every database, every table, all in one gorgeous product. Well, that's Notion, and I am addicted to it. Not all work collaboration tools are created equal. We all know that. Some of them help you organize your company's information. Great. Others, they allow you to manage projects together. But Notion does both. It's one tool for your whole team to do it all. So stop having 50 tabs open in your browser. Use one beautifully designed product that everyone will want to use. Here is your call to action. Learn more and get started right now for free at Notion.com. Take the first step toward an organized, happy team today. Go to Notion.com to get started right now. You're going to love it. And share your deal memo with me. I think the most important part is the point of like globalization maybe being unwound a little bit. I think what we realized during the pandemic was that this codependency, at best, globalization means, hey, less chance of war, cultural sharing, we get to know each other, all good, trade, people visiting each other's country, fantastic, going to different schools, collaboration on space stations, whatever, all good stuff. But then when it dips into codependency, and we saw that with, drugs, PPE, semiconductors, it gets a little scary because then when you have a disagreement, you can kind of rug pull each other. And we see that with Russia and Germany. And so I think this is the this race towards resiliency amongst countries is very important because it'll make the relationship more stable. So while this feels unstable in the short term, this kind of equal footing will not allow people to rug pull each other. So if you've ever seen a dysfunctional relationship between two friends of yours who have kids and they don't have enough money to get a second home and they, they can't get divorced because they're in debt and the kids are in school and one of them wants to go to New York. I mean, and you see it get like really ugly, but they can't pull the plug on it. They can't fully get divorced and just move on with their lives for whatever complications. Now, if they both had enough money, they both had independent careers, and they could, both agree to live in a city, go to therapy, whatever. All those things could add up and they could just, like we see Gwyneth Paltrow and the guy from
Coldplay, Chris Martin.
They're like, they have the resources to conscientiously decouple. They're like, oh yeah, just buy a mansion next to my mansion and we'll, or whatever. You see celebrities do this all the time.
Yeah.
We have to be able to consciously
reliance
decouple.
Is a big deal. Consciously uncouple. So other things of note. I think, and then let's talk about Apple in the context of this decoupling, because it is extremely interesting and exactly. I mean, this is such a massive trend that's happening globally right now. But on Taiwan, I think we should note she also pledged to make the most efforts to pursue a peaceful reunification with Taiwan, but said China will not commit to abandoning the military option. Stressed that China must achieve and has the ability to achieve a complete reunification. And then required strengthening military training and battle preparedness. So there does seem to be some there. So there's still a threat. And when you look at chip production, for example, TSMC is the biggest semiconductor manufacturer and foundry in the world. And that's located in Taiwan, where people have considered it to be sort of a safe place to do business. And she is quite clearly signaling here, no, it's not. That's still the plan. The plan is still to take back Taiwan, full stop, which is how we get to Apple.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great philosophy, which was we would say at the same time, and this is really hard to keep in your head at one time, we believe in one China. That's their philosophy of there's one China, includes Hong Kong and Taiwan, while believing in the sovereignty and the people of Taiwan having some self-determination. That's what America's position was for a long time now. That seems incredibly contradictory. And so...
Right. It was always pretty untenable.
Yeah. And you just have to kind of keep that ambiguity as long as you can, is the game that we've been playing with China for a long time. Now with Hong Kong, the British gave it back and that's game over. And you saw what they did there. They just rolled over it. And the way he framed the Hong Kong stuff in this was there were a lot of bad actors in Hong Kong and who were anti-China and we finally got them out.
We cleaned them out. Yeah.
Yeah, we cleaned it up, thankfully, and we saved Hong Kong. So that's the framing here. If they go into Taiwan, they're saving Hong Kong from these bad actors who are against the Chinese people. I don't think it's going to happen. I'll be honest. I don't think we're going to have a nuclear war with Russia. I don't think they're going to invade Taiwan. I think we just have to get back to this concept of status quo and kicking the can down the road and allowing there to be some ambiguity here where we're not forcing people to resolve these issues and just kind of kick the can down the road and then let time go by, because demographics change, people evolve, societies evolve. You don't have to force the issue. I'm hoping for an extended period of ambiguity with Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Cuba. Look at the ambiguity with Cuba. Has this been disastrous? It hasn't been great for the people of Cuba, but we haven't had a war and we haven't had nuclear missiles there. So sometimes you can wait people out and the young people in the country eventually decide they want their freedom, which is what's happening in Iran right now. And you can support those freedom fighters, but you don't need to saber rattle all that much. And now we're in saber rattling territory. And that's always bad news.
Yeah, I mean, we could be very happy with ambiguity, and I think we were for a long time. It depends on whether the folks on the other side of the equation are happy with ambiguity, and we don't really know. I recently got subscribed to this interesting news service that's kind of a secret think tank for bigwigs. I don't really know. I did a thing for them. It was an Aspen connection, but they have been writing a lot about this CRINC alliance: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. And how increasingly there's Iran is sort of outsourcing nuclear testing to North Korea. And then, and that there's this alliance that's been building that is already essentially waging an economic war with the West. It's an interesting, and then there were people on Twitter today, and this gets to kind of the tech angle part of this. There were people on Twitter today saying like, listen, you can't even, because one of Xi's, of course, big themes here is that we have to be technologically independent as well. And that just, you cannot overstate how good American technology is, how advanced it is. Like they were quoting people from China saying, like every breakthrough that China has made has basically been built by either stealing or grabbing open source code, of course, from Microsoft, from all of these companies. Yeah. And there was also, speaking of China, last week we covered the U.S.'s new rules on chip exports. And as part of those rules, U.S. citizens are being prohibited from supporting China's chip development. At least 43 American execs are working across 16 semiconductor companies. Yeah, and the U.S. is essentially debating, like, are these employees just going to have to come home? They're just in limbo right now.
Sure, come home.
Yep.
It's not the end of the world. We'll find you a job. I mean, you work in semiconductors. I mean,
we have the CHIPS Act. We're building here.
We're literally talking about 43 people. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world. Yeah.
And via anonymous sources at Nikkei, Apple has frozen, like the fallout of this is already starting. Yeah. Apple has frozen plans to use memory chips from the Chinese company YMTC in its China-based iPhones. These were planned to be used only for iPhones sold in China. Oh. And Apple had been buying them because government-funded YMTC chips were 20% cheaper than competitors. But now that company is on this like unverified list that the U.S. created on October 7th. And so Apple's like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to do business with them anymore. Like it's that, again, economic warfare is occurring.
Yeah.
And
great. It's, and
there you go. And the end.
At some point, you're going to have to look at the relationships between the countries and decide which things are accretive to your citizens and which ones aren't, and this is a natural thing. We have to think about what's in our best interest. What I will say about this alliance of dictators and authoritarians is they're going to lose. They're going to lose. Why? Because authoritarians don't get along well with each other. And capitalism and competition always breeds the best results. Now, we can complain on the margins about, wealth inequality, how fast people get rich, bad behavior on the part of CEOs, or capitalism's unintended consequence. All of those will be true. Bad things happen in capitalism. The bad things that happen in capitalism, the worst days of capitalism are better than the best days of an authoritarian country. So just let that sink in. There is nobody on this planet, no human being, who, given the proper choices and education on, like, here's the choices of where you could live, would ever pick those four countries: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Put those four countries on a list of, four other countries in the West, free countries: Canada, the US, UK, Germany, Sweden. I don't know, pick any country. Those four are coming in last every time. If citizens were going to pick where they want to live, 100% of the time. I mean, they have to be educated to understand exactly how great freedom is in those other countries. They'll lose. Now, they might have little pockets of winning here and there where they steal something, or they can build a faster train because they can run over people's houses and take eminent domain. Yeah, of course. Dictators can have, shining moments of authoritarianism that are highly effective, right? And they don't have red tape. But
where you're seeing China start to stumble is, to your exact point, is in its increasing embrace of like aggressive authoritarianism.
How many times have you been slowed down by time-consuming tasks like data entry or scheduling meetings? Well, just imagine how productive you could be if you dropped all that back office stuff and then you just focused on the growth of your startup, on your product, on hiring great people, right? You've got really important things: your team, your product, and your customers to focus on. Those are the three most important things in startups. Your schedule, data entry, that's stuff you got to get done. It's blocking and tackling. Well, Helpware is people as a service. And it's going to make your team bionic. It's going to augment your team. Let's just go to helpware.com/twist to sign up and get $1,000 off right now. So go do that while I read this ad. Basically, Helpware helps outsource tasks that slow your team down. Again, mundane stuff: data entry, data normalization, all this important stuff. More complex tasks like customer support and even AI operations, right? You're tagging stuff in AI, you're trying to clean up a data set. Wait until you hear about who uses Helpware. DoorDash, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and more. Imagine if all your top performers wasted zero time on back office tasks and they were all just focused on growing the business. Get back more time and be more efficient, save money, and focus your management team and your team on driving the business forward. It's all possible with Helpware. Go to helpware.com/twist and get $1,000 off your first invoice. That's right, HELPWARE.com/twist for $1,000 off that first invoice. And welcome to the Twist family, to our friends at Helpware.
China had this kind of directed, for a while, this is the reason people thought it would be safe to do business in China. China had this kind of directed capitalism, right? Capitalism light model. It was like you could do business and they were going to allow competition to flourish, but it would be directed by the Communist Party. And for a while there, that was incredibly effective. It has been incredibly effective. China has built millions and millions of miles of high-speed rail. I'm getting to your exact point.
What happened?
But you should still look back and examine what does, and I'm certainly not arguing for an authoritarian regime here, but like it came close, right? And unfortunately, China regressed to the ego, to the extreme authoritarian model. And she is just like, we're going to roll it all back and the government's going to like cancel your listing and disappear Jack Ma. And all of that is always what can happen in an authoritarian regime. And that is not to say that China didn't get a lot done for a minute there. And what can we learn?
But why?
What can we learn about working together,
so
right? What can we learn about we learn about the idea of a collective good?
Yeah, but before we get to that, the why. Yeah. Why did it collapse? Why did their incredible entrepreneurial run, Alibaba?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It collapsed because of authoritarianism.
Yes, because a single person
the
who's in charge.
government said, I need to be in charge. You know, the government was like, we're in charge, mainly Xi himself, who is clearly positioning himself as a future, God king of China, without a doubt.
So that's the nuance there, I think. So that's why I was sort of getting at. I don't think it's a collective.
I get your point.
Thing.
What I'm saying is, what
in
could
Russia,
we
it's
do?
One person, Putin.
What could we do if we all rowed in the same direction? Like I've just been reading this.
The communists? You mean?
Like never mind.
No, I'm saying if U.S. and Russia and China could row in the same direction.
No, I'm saying what could the U.S. do if we could row in the same direction? If we were persuadable, if we had an idea. Okay.
You don't think we're rowing in the same direction? I mean, I think
country.
Yeah, I think we are.
Right now,
it's messy. Yeah, sure. I mean, we're arguing over stuff, but we are rowing in the same direction ultimately because we have freedom. So like the fact that we're going to have a vibrant debate as to who gets that seat and Xi Jinping just picked it for life, proof positive, it's a messy system we have here. And yeah, it's never felt more polarized. I'm sure it was as polarized in the 60s. I think it was as polarized. We just didn't experience
Ironically, it's actually always been like, if you look back at the presidential election maps for 100 years, it's exactly the same. Yeah. Like it's like almost exactly the same margin. Like we're just a half and half country.
Yeah. I mean, are you talking about Anand's talk, his New York Times piece?
I'm talking about his new book. Yeah, he's got a new book that the New York Times piece is based on, and it's a really fascinating. I haven't read the whole book yet, but I've read a whole bunch of excerpts and all of his writing about it, and it's just what he's proposing is like an approach of. There's an actual technique called deep canvassing that's been very politically effective, where you take, groups of people and they go and talk to people one-on-one, and they're like 15-minute conversations. They can be very short and profoundly effective because it's just like, hey, deep canvassing.
Canvassing. Got it. Okay. Just want to make sure I got it.
And it's like the concept of empathy, meeting people where they are, hearing them out, and then telling a positive story about like, hey, I hear you on this position. Here's my reasoned and positive argument about why I think that my policy might get us to a better place. And the people will go out and have these 15-minute conversations. I think I interviewed somebody who worked on this for How We Survive, and it was used to best effect and maybe even somewhat invented during the, Prop 8, the gay marriage bill in California.
Interesting.
So he has this whole book where he's just talking to people who are attempting to persuade, like not change your mind or convince you or brainwash you, right? But to engage in a real, actual understanding conversation, to meet someone where they are and say, hey, I hear your feelings about this extreme topic. Let's talk about this openly and honestly. Let me accept your point of view. And then we figure out how we can move forward together. So
when do you demonize the person?
I mean, listen, I'm not in a place to have this kind of empathy right now. So.
When do you demonize the person? Like, when do you tell them they're terrible in this? No, it's a great idea. I'm literally looking up deep canvassing here.
Wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is what I was trying to say is, how is there a version where we could achieve a sameness of purpose and a common goal without having an authoritarian? Like, I'm not trying to say that, but at some point, you do have to, like, the reason China was able to accomplish so much is that they were able to say, like, these are the OKRs for the whole country.
Yes.
And then this is what you will be judged on your performance toward those goals. And no, you didn't get the opportunity to agree on those goals. But let's say we use the process of democracy and listening and conversation and empathy to create common goals. Then think about what we could accomplish and be freaking amazing.
It's incredible.
Instead of being like, I mean, there have been a bunch of articles today about how the like environmental justice movement is setting back climate policy because they're just like, nope, if it's not, killing all the oil and gas, we're not going to do it. True. Right. Yeah. But anyway.
Well, I mean, we
should have Anand on. I want to talk about this. Like, I just think that is such an interesting.
I want to talk to Anand because I think he's quite insightful. I find him a little pretentious and hypocritical at times, but I do like him. I mean, he can be a rhetorical bomb thrower. That's why I find this book so interesting, because this book, even the book itself, it doesn't, his opinions are not really in there. It's just like all the stories of the people who are doing this work. I think he evolved from his first work, the Winners, what was it, Winners Take All or something. It was an okay book. But it was like, he talks about like how like capitalism is horrible. And like, then in the end, he's like, yeah, and by the way, like, I was like an Aspen fellow flying on these guys' private jets, and I was working at this thing, Boston. It was like, the whole thing was kind of ruined by, he's like, oh, he's just deep in this system grifting. And I was just like, Anand, come on.
Yeah.
Getting paid speaking fees, whatever.
Grifting is a little strong. You can be critical of a system that you live happily or comfortably within.
It felt like he was benefiting from the system and then, found another angle to criticize it, whatever. I'm open-minded to it, but I do like this idea though of what you're saying, if we could get everybody aligned on the important issues, is one of the things I've always tried to do, is think from a little more first principles of like, what's the actual issue here? And if you look at the issue of immigration, which we keep talking about here, people keep sending people from Texas to Nantucket or whatever, or Martha's Vineyard, it's such a polarizing discussion, whereas it should just be a numbers-based discussion and a logic-based discussion. And we should separate it into like the three buckets, as I've talked about many times here. And I think like this script, because I'm looking up the deep canvassing, and the first word was scripts. Yeah. And I started, while you were talking, I pulled up the script to look at the abortion script. I'm looking at right now, like how to talk to people about abortion and choice or transgender issues. It's actually a really interesting thing if you could just get people to a basic way of talking about this, which isn't, they want to steal our jobs, you're a racist, right? And that's what the immigration discussion is. And, both sides they keep framing this, and I always talk about framing here, is like, the framing should be for immigration is, who do we need in America to make this country stronger, and who do we want to let in because it's the right moral thing to do? Like, and then how can we reasonably hit those goals in terms of having a plan? And if you don't hear any Republicans or Democrats talk about it that way, what are the positions here that we can't fill that are holding back the country? Okay, we don't have enough nurses. Great. Are we recruiting enough nurses here? Are we making it equitable for people in America to get those nursing jobs? Okay, great. Checkbox. Yes. Anybody in America who wants to be a nurse can get a free education as a nurse and get an ISA. That's actually true today, by the way. Any American who wants to be a nurse can get that job and not have to pay for the degree up front. They can get what's called an income sharing agreement and pay for it after they get the job. And the job pays an absurd amount of money. It's so in demand that nurses are making $250,000 a year when they go on tour, like when they will come from Alabama to work at Stanford. I was talking to somebody, like they have these rotating nurses that they pay triple. Traveling nurses get paid like 3 or 4 times the amount. Yeah. It's crazy.
I know, and then it leads to like strikes in the hospitals because the nurses that are already there don't get paid that much. It's like
and the nurses who are there are like, okay, you're coming from Alabama or Stanford, I'll go to Alabama. Yeah. And so it's just like it's a really gaming kind of thing. And so we could just literally go down the categories Here are the positions we need. Okay, let's make sure Americans have access to it first. Great, that makes total sense. Okay, and now how many nurses do we want to get? And what countries? And so if people are showing up at the border, we could say, okay, do you have a high school education? Can you speak English? Or are you willing to learn English? Great. Here's your nursing track. We'll accept you based on the nursing track. As opposed to just anybody shows up at the border or anybody flies in or anybody pays people off. And I like the idea of people buying citizenship. That to me is a genius idea.
They have it in a bunch of countries, the golden passport visa.
Malta.
And I don't know if
Peter Thiel's buying Malta for 750,000 euros. You can buy a passport there. Yeah, Malta's only 750,000. No, he's buying a $750,000 passport from Malta. Yeah. And then you also have to have a residence there for the 2 years or something during it. So they basically get you to rent an apartment for 2 years.
It got super popular. Well, I think you have to buy property, right? It got super popular in Portugal, the golden visa thing. I don't know if Canada has a golden visa program
Canada
where you can invest a certain amount.
Yeah. I think it was like if you invested $1 million in a real estate project, let's go.
Actually, Spain has it.
Yeah.
Barcelona, I'm in.
I love it. Let's go. Ooh.
But we
can record the show at dinner time.
I do think it's increasingly, right? Let's do that.
We get the show out by like 10 a.m. It would be great.
I want to go to there. Let's do it. I do think, though.
Let's do it for a month.
I like the idea of trying to bias toward people who are trying to unite us instead of divide us, because there is we have had enough of that, and it is purposeful. It is purposeful because we are weaker. I mean, I think this is the point that I was clumsily trying to make about China. We are weaker when all we do is fight with each other.
No, we got weaker. I just didn't understand which country you were talking about. That was actually the person you were trying to convince was confused.
Let me finish my sentence and then I will get there.
Sorry. I was just trying to understand it.
All right. Hey, you want to talk about startups?
Yeah, we are here on This Week in Startups. All this stuff is related. I mean, I think there's, by the way, there are editorial products and startups in this vector. So, you know, getting people to talk about these issues in the way we're describing here, that's a product, right? You could start thinking about products here that would actually be beneficial and creative ideas. I think the world's ready for it. Did you see the hike going on between Mitt Romney and who's the guy who always votes to not spend on the Democratic Party? He's the 50th vote. Joe Manchin. So you get Joe Manchin and Mitt Romney went on a hike with their wives at a national park and did some photo ops. I've been saying crossover ticket for a long time. I wanted the Mitt Romney Hillary or the Bloomberg and Cheney. I want something like that. That to me would be boom, right down the middle, a Republican and a Democrat. Because by the way, did you know that's how the United States used to work? Second place became vice president.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that until maybe 5 years ago.
We all learned it in Hamilton.
I learned it in Hamilton, but then I also forgot it. And I was just like, wow. Yeah, all right.
I did know that. Well, okay, so a good startup, because today's startup of the day literally has all of these topics in it. It has better discourse and also possibly Chinese disinformation as a double whammy. Okay, startup of the day is called Gas, GAS, like gas fees or the stuff that goes in your car for now. Gas is an app asking teens to compliment each other via anonymous polls, which is super interesting. It's designed specifically to appeal to high schoolers. Users select which school I think they go to when they sign in, and they can only answer questions about their classmates. But the questions, the polls, are designed to be really positive. Who do you think is the most fun? Who do you think has the best hairdo? And then if you're selected in the poll, like if you're, the one who wins the, from a boy in 11th grade, who should DJ every party? Okay, and then they list these 4 people. Gas up your friends is the concept.
Got it. Gaslighting. But not exactly gaslighting. It's a negative connotation. It's the opposite. Gas is like to pump up your friend.
Pump them up. Exactly. And then you vote anonymously, and it's supposed to be this really positive thing. And it's gotten extremely popular very fast. It had displaced Be Real and TikTok even. According to the Wall Street Journal, it was downloaded more than 500,000 times since its launch in late August. Now, listen, you can debate whether this is going to go horribly wrong quickly. I don't know. But what's super interesting about it is that, one, you have founders who are really trying to create some positive space, which is delightful. Yeah. And also, that its sudden increase in popularity coincided with a disinformation campaign.
What?
In which the founder tweeted a whole thread about gas getting caught up in a human trafficking hoax.
I know this founder, Nikita.
Yeah, Nikita Bier.
Yeah.
Bier. Tweeted a thread about how after an investigation, our team found several indications that the gas app human trafficking hoax was planted by an entity or person originating in China, TikTok. Our data shows users connecting from China when the app first began growing, and the first fake review was posted that day. The review was then screenshotted and posted to TikTok the following day by an account with few to no U.S. teen followers, and then subsequently led to gas app searches to autocomplete to gas app trafficking. The video was later deleted after the hoax gained momentum, and they have been targeted with denial of service attacks with many IPs originating from China.
This is the same team that brought us the TBH, To Be Honest app, where you take like anonymous questions, which obviously, you know, we talked about anonymity here. It's a very dangerous space with children.
I don't love it.
We had a whole wave of suicides in Web 2.0. There was an app called FormSpring. There was an app called Secret.
Yes.
And we were investors in an app called Whisper, which was exactly like this, a positive spin where and all of these shared a common dynamic, location and anonymity. And then in some cases, address book and friend graph plus anonymity plus location. So some combination of those things means you can find your friend group without knowing who's saying what. Now, of course, the app would probably know. And if the app knows, boy, that's super dangerous. But it eventually leads to bullying. And so you have to tread very lightly. And here, I understand, I believe the founders have great intent, by the way. And I think founders of those other apps had great intent as well. Whisper never got caught up in this, but FormSpring and Secret, I don't know if Secret, but with FormSpring, there were a number of suicides. Now, there's a number of suicides that happen, sadly, in the world. So if you were like, how many people ordered an Amazon package today and killed themselves? Not the Amazon story where we talked about, specific things to kill yourself with, but just generally people who used an iPhone today and killed themselves, there would be a correlation of 50% because they either used Android or, iPhone. Yeah. So just be careful with correlation and causation, right? This is obvious, but sometimes the press will run with things or social media will run with things. This is causing that. And it would have happened anyway, because tragically, some people commit suicide. So anyway, in this case, because of this anonymity, that releases the ability of people to bully. And young kids experiment with bullying, sadly, tragically, because they're becoming adolescents and adults bully, kids bully. It's part of the dark nature of our DNA.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be careful if you build a tool that accelerates that, right? Or can accelerate it, because the person on the receiving end may have never experienced, in person, you could have 5 people bully you, right? Or in the case of the movie Carrie, the whole school class bullied the one person at once.
Right.
She obviously had superpowers and murdered them all, but so be it. That's what makes that's what makes that story so resonant, right? Is that
so? Don't bully, friends. Yeah.
Well, it is what makes it so resonate. That's why that became such a powerful story, Carrie, is because everybody's experienced bullying, and then you had, well, what would happen if the whole school bullied somebody and they could actually, take back their power? And of course, school shootings are part of that. And this is why it's a dangerous thing for entrepreneurs and technologists to get involved in this dynamic. Because
it is.
There are edge cases. And as a parent, we both are attuned to them because we hear the stories when people come back from school of somebody who's been bullied.
I think you can. I'm trying to figure out if in this case, yes. I mean, look, trying to predict usage and control content is a fool's errand. Like trying to say, this is a product that only exists for people to be nice to each other. It's just like, I think that maybe is what Mark Zuckerberg thought initially about Facebook, right? You will find cute girls because that's what they originally designed it for. And everybody will just want to be friends here. Yes. And I think there were people legitimately at Facebook who had never just considered what people are like, right? So that is always going to be a dangerous game. What is interesting about gas is that it appears that they have a set list of prompts. You can't enter your own. So it's just maybe they will increase the prompts over time, and all you can do is enter names of people in your school.
Right.
So it's a super limited interaction.
And the prompts are like, who would be the best DJ at a party? Who do like, I saw one of them was like, who would I most like to steal from their boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever it is. Yeah. The idea is that who do you secretly admire, is that none of the prompts. The most beautiful person you ever met. Yeah. None of the prompts are user generated. The prompts are not user generated.
Exactly. You are not allowed to generate your own prompt. You can only choose from... Because then somebody
can say, who's the biggest loser? Who's the biggest dork? Who has the most body odor? Who's most likely to kill themselves? You could do something really horrific.
Exactly.
To taunt somebody.
They would, right? And people
Of course they would, yes.
Because that's how people are. Now, I do think there's, it's weird to have people voting on each other anyway, right? Like, because somebody's going to lose the poll. Like, I don't know. But at least I will say they have put in the guardrails. I just think there are two interesting things about this. One is that they're experimenting with the guardrails so that you can't generate your own prompts.
Good, smart move. Good product decision.
And that you're not voting on people you don't know. There's no sort of like or at least that don't go to your same school.
Right.
Smart. But two, that they seem to have been review bombed by China.
I guess brigading would be the other issue here. It's like, could we all create a way to vote for a specific person for something the person didn't want? But I guess if the prompts are thoughtfully done, that would be harder. But this is basically the dynamic of the yearbook, but every day. So instead of on graduation, who's most likely to succeed, who's most likely to get married, who's most likely to be prom queen, all those kind of things, which I always had a problem with. I thought those were pretty...
I never liked that process. And we had most likely to end up in the state pen. Like, we had some messed up ones.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is like, those were also a little bit... Yeah,
that one was anonymous, by the way. It was just one guy. We all knew it. I'm going to look him up.
Did he wind up in the pen?
I don't know. I'm going to try to find out.
You kind of know. Yeah. I mean, just because you can vote doesn't mean you should. But this founder, Nikita, I don't think he likes me. I think he's kind of dunked on me a couple times on Twitter. But I do think he seems pretty thoughtful and talented.
Mm-hmm. And has tried this before. Like, he's trying to introduce positive discourse into Gen Z and millennial life. And this one seems to be catching on.
I like the fact that I like the fact that he has good intent and he's trying to do something that is thoughtful. So I give him kudos for that.
Also, there is, I think, between this and Be Real, we should take note, and TikTok, we should take note of the fact that we do have 1.5 generations, like younger millennials and Gen Zs, who are without a doubt looking for alternatives to the social apps they have.
Yeah. It's kind of like, Facebook was for boomers. Twitter is and Instagram is for Gen Xers and maybe millennials.
Yeah.
TikTok is for Gen Z. And what's the generation after Gen Z? I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But whoever they are.
Alpha? I think
whatever.
Alpha?
I mean, would 10 to 15-year-olds be considered Gen Z right now? I don't think so. There's something else.
Yeah, no, my son's Gen Z. Yeah. He's 15. I think he's right there in the... But without a doubt, I think even TikTok, they're like, it's awesome, but they're willing to explore. This is a really ripe moment for something new. It is Alpha, right? Yeah. Look at those kids.
Gen Alpha.
The cool name.
Great.
The cool
I like
name.
it. Gen Alpha's great. Yeah.
Starting all over. Anyway, super interesting startup story, super interesting opportunity, I think, to build things like more private, more positive, more controlled. People are just into group messaging, the one post a day. Like we're starting to hone in on some opportunities here.
I think, it's almost like they're inoculating themselves to the viruses and the bacteria in the previous social network. So they're like, oh, in that previous social network, you used it too much. Okay, how do we throttle addiction in this app? Okay, Be Real. Okay, in that other one, you bullied each other. Okay, how do we inoculate, our peers from being bullied? Okay, great, let's do that. So, nature finds a way, to quote Jeff Goldblum, and that's what is happening here. I think nature is finding a way to mitigate against what the previous things did poorly. So kudos to good product developers.
Good product developers, people understanding this opportunity, younger people building companies. I'm so happy they use that analogy because I've been saying this for years. Like, social networking is really new. If you think about it, it is really new to our society. And so, of course, we didn't have an immunity to it. And now these next generations are evolving and starting to develop.
I deleted TikTok this weekend, by the way.
Oh, really?
Just off my phone. I'm like, it was starting to become, I understand the habit it builds. it was starting to become like, when I turn my phone on, I go to Twitter, I go to podcasts, I go to Slack, I go to my email, and then TikTok got in that rotation. And I'm like, this is not adding anything to my life.
Right. You're like, wait a second, this just became a habit.
And it's a habit. And like, I'd rather have chess or, Grammarly or a writing app become a habit than this. And so I'm just looking at my habit and said, this was not adding to my life.
Yeah.
So, except that it did find me a We Live in the Future story, which I shared.
I know.
TikTok
and
so
maybe a new entrepreneur. But maybe. Yes.
I mean, I guess there'll be moments there. Yeah.
Should we do that? Should we do the We Live in the Future?
I think we should. I mean, I teed it up here. I mean, I basically saw a TikTok and I was like, oh, that's like We Live in the Future segment, but done on TikTok. So let's draft off of that.
And is it real? Apparently.
That was my thinking. I was like, is this real or is this just like some sci-fi thing, which is the point of We Live in the Future? I
think you saw it. Actually, I want to start following, or I would start following this account, except that as we have discussed many, many times, my TikTok is only for dogs and other cute animals. So I can't, but she looks super cool, galactic gal, and she has fabulous space-themed nails, like amazing nail game. And also pointed out to us this company called Spinlaunch, which is making a rotating arm, a huge one, like Statue of Liberty size rotating arm, that can fling small satellites into low orbit space.
Sweet.
What? It is amazing.
Like
do we have the video? Can we do the video?
Yeah, we're watching the video
there
here.
There it is.
Wait, that's a real thing in the world?
It's real. It like really exists. And it is John Doerr personally and Kleiner Perkins were investors in the round. They pulled off their 10th successful test launch in less than a year, just a few weeks ago. They first raised funding in a $3.9 million seed round in 2015 and then raised a $71 million Series B just last month in September, led by ATW Partners at a $171 million valuation. It is amazing. According to space.com, the customer payloads launched by the accelerator had to survive up to 10,000 Gs, 10,000 times the force of the Earth's gravity, as this 108-foot long rotating arm hidden inside a white casing spun up the payload faster than the speed of sound. And we have this slow-mo right now of this rocket shoot. Now, what I want to know, because actually it turns out that like jet fuel is a massive emitter, like a massively polluting, right? And super dangerous. So I wonder how this thing is powered. And if it is by launching things into space, like, do they need rocket fuel or are they just literally propelled? It seems like they're just literally propelled.
They need a lot of energy to do this, obviously. They're burning something. I'm guessing they have some type of, they might have jet fuel or diesel or something to power those engines. I'm not sure electricity alone could do it.
I don't know.
Maybe electricity could. I don't know how, something going through a centrifuge or whatever works in terms of, does it require a massive amount of thrust initially, or can you slowly just add power to it, right? I don't know.
Exactly. And then centrifugal force would take over and then it would be like self-perpetuating.
That's the thing I don't understand. And then
I guess questions.
A lot of questions. And then but it's fun to look at. And
so cool.
I wonder what you can put in there. So now, because of those G-forces, there's G-forces on rockets as well, right? So I don't know.
But I don't think they're 10,000.
The G-forces, I don't think it's 10,000. So then I wonder what components would survive this or not. And then your question, is it going to use more or less energy and how much more or less? Because let's say these were Starlinks or, low Earth orbit. I'm assuming this does low Earth orbit.
Yeah,
if these do low Earth orbit and then there are components in there that can't survive the Gs, well, then it's kind of worthless. So if you can just chunk, putting a brick of metal up into space does nothing for you. But putting lenses and putting chips and memory chips and batteries, like, does all that stuff just break when it spins that fast?
Well, I guess it depends, right? They'd have to be encased and well encased. And then does the casing break off once it's in orbit?
Or I don't know. Do those materials just crack? Like, does glass crack when you put it at 10,000 Gs, right? I don't know.
I have no idea.
And like, does the glass that you need for, I'm assuming some of these satellites will have like glass or batteries or transistors that just can't survive this. So maybe you can't do Starlinks with this. But then it's like, okay, well, what's the point? The low Earth orbit satellites need to have GPS, whatever in it. So that's going to be the real test.
Yeah. But this is really interesting, though. They say they do, in fact, aim to have an orbital launch system that's cheaper and more environmentally friendly.
That is the goal, yeah.
I mean, that could shoot small constellations of satellites into low Earth orbit. This is so cool.
I wonder how long it takes. Like, so can they shoot one an hour, one a day? Like, does the centrifugal force take 3 hours to build up to this or 3 minutes?
I mean, this is one of those where, like, I don't want to have every entrepreneur on when we talk about we live in the future necessarily, but I do. Can you guys call us?
I think it should be. Yeah.
I think you guys should come on. Like, I really want to know more.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's a microsatellite bus.
Okay. So maybe that's what they're going to do. Yeah.
And maybe that's what they're going to, yeah. I love fantastic. The idea of just saying like, hey, we've only thought about using rockets to get stuff into low Earth orbit. And that's really hard and really expensive and super polluting and dangerous. What if we instead just use like a catapult, right? Like that's just sort of human ingenuity. Like, we've always done it this way, but what if instead we just went,
well, what happened to the space elevator? Remember the space elevator concept? That was going to change everything. And it was the idea was you would just build this basically very long string with a weight on it. And then it would have an elevator attached to it. And you could put something in the elevator, theoretically humans, but more likely payloads. It would go out into space. And as the Earth is rotating, you'd have this like trailing.
Totally. There's a really cool, there's these books called the Red Mars, of course, obviously. The Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson. They were written, they're so detailed that they almost feel like a history of colonizing Mars the way they're written. And they have space elevators. And at some point, spoiler alert, there's like a terrorist attack and they like blow the cables.
Oh, that's
and
the Foundation. Wait, that's the Foundation series, right? It's on Apple right now. Oh, okay.
No. It's called the Mars trilogy. It's like Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars is the 3 books.
The Foundation series, this is why like we even started We Live in the Future was the concept was there were in the Foundation series, and I just put the trailer here and they can zip up into the trailer, but spoiler alert, there is a space elevator, which is how everybody gets from Earth to space, and there's a terrorist attack on it. Now this all happens in the first episode and it's in the trailer. So if you go to 2 minutes into the trailer, you'll see the moment where that happens. And obviously it's quite spectacular to blow up a space elevator with a city attached to it.
And the giant cable comes crashing down, to Earth.
And kills everybody on Earth.
To the planet, rather, and kills like tons of people,
There it is. Boom. Yeah. Space elevator.
I mean, that's got to still, I feel like the space elevator has still got to be coming. Anyway, I want to know more about the catapult. I love it. I think that's rad.
It would be pretty great, I think, if we could get more stuff up there quicker. I mean, the impact that low Earth orbit satellites are going to have, when we have 3 or 4 vendors up there, this is going to be nuts. Like the impact that free or close to free internet's going to have on the world is just truly mind-boggling. I think every home is going to have 2 or 3 internet connections soon. Like we talked about this last week. 5G
we talked about this last week, and I love it. I love the idea of it, like as cheap backup internet. I mean, I love your entire concept of race to resilience, like generally, right? That's a home-to-home thing. Like I have been saying to people, I'm like, the story of the 21st century, of this decade and the next few, is going to be decentralization. No doubt about it. Oh, I'm super into low Earth orbit as a place for manufacturing. Like, I think we're going to be able to Jeff Bezos even talked about this after one of the Blue Origin flights. Like, we're going to probably be able to situate factories and some manufacturing. They've been actually doing a bunch of, the International Space Station has a whole public-private partnership thing happening, and they're starting to work on manufacturing. And one of the things they can make is like fiber optic cables for internet transmission that have 0 latency, but can really effectively only be manufactured in space because gravity introduces imperfections. But you could move a bunch of very, very dirty industries to space without polluting the planet and do manufacturing. I mean, this is obviously a far...
Yeah, that's really out there. But yeah, so if there was something we made on Earth that was particularly gnarly, dirty,
steel.
You do it in space.
We could do steel production in space.
Then the output would go into space and not hurt space, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. It's a great concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, space mining, yes. I briefly considered, I think it's a little too early, which is my trend, but I briefly considered, instead of becoming a VC, trying to become a space lawyer. Because I think space law is like one of the industries of the future. Seriously, like when we start to fight about like who gets to mine an asteroid, who gets to be in low Earth orbit, are there parts of it that are like territorial disputes? Yes. There's like going to be war. There are all these contracts. Luxembourg, the country of Luxembourg, this is what a freaking nerd I am, by the way. That all this stuff is not only stuff I know, but am obsessed with. The country of Luxembourg has set itself up as like a center for space law. They're like, this is one of the industries of the future, and we're on it.
Like the Zug in Switzerland for crypto. Yeah, you could be like, hey, we'll do space law. It's going to be who gets there first and who wants to fight. It's like, how much do you want to fight for this, right? I think it's going to become part of it. But it does seem who you're hovering above matters. So if you want to beam your satellites into a certain country, you got to get that country's permission right now. Now, if you're far, but what if you said, no, I don't care? Right. Then I guess that country would just be like, okay, it's our sovereign airspace, theoretically.
Well, that's what China is doing, and Russia. They keep blowing stuff up. They keep literally blowing up their own satellites and being like, debris be damned. There is a treaty. There is an international treaty, like a global treaty that's supposed to govern this stuff. And then, you have countries just being like, nah, not gonna.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Another great day.
We live in the future.
We do live in the future. And startup of the day, just through the lens of like, would I invest in that company, by the way? Great founder, serial founder, amazing design. It's kind of an outlier in terms of, how it works. I could see consumers subscribing to it. I think
You're talking about gas. To be clear, we should clarify for the audience. We're talking about gas, not Spinlaunch.
On gas, if I were to take it through my rubric of investing, great design, serial founder, serial team, has had an exit before, just a lot of the qualities I look for. And it's got a subscription model built in, right? Like it's just easily people would pay to subscribe to that. That's got like a lot of check boxes for me. And then, in terms of the market size, it's huge. So that's a no-brainer to invest in. For the second one, for we live in the future one, if I put it through the lens, it's definitely an outlier, but man, that's hardware is hard. Man, that's a hard one to do. That's going to be capital intensive, and it's going to be at a price that makes no sense, right? The valuation makes no sense compared to probably their revenue. So that's a real hard one to justify investing in, unless you've got a fund specifically designed to make 20-year investments like Jurvetson does. That's probably why, by the way, John Doerr did it personally.
I was going to say, when you look at something that John Doerr is in, it's like a big freaking dream that
low chance of success.
You might want to let somebody else have that dream.
Yeah, well, it's a low chance of success with a high payoff if it does succeed, right? So it's an outlier. It's an outlier's outlier, right? There's just no known path to profitability there, or a low path to profitability, because while space delivery of satellites payloads is proven, this technique is not proven. So it's really an outlier. But that's
it's
why
almost
John's
like
making the bet.
It's almost like an R&D investment, right? It's really interesting. Like you want to incentivize the R&D and you hope it works out.
What do you think the realistic timeline of something like that is, and the realistic footprint of capital required to get there? It's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm guessing a decade or two before it's viable. So if you have a 20-year horizon, great. Venture funds have a 10. So, it's what is the LPs? If you have LPs investing in, they better be LPs that are generational LPs. In other words, the people working at the institution that would fund a bet like this are probably not going to be in the job when this thing hits profitability. So think about that for a second. Somebody working at some pension fund makes the decision to invest in a venture fund that invests in this, and the venture fund employees and the employees at that pension fund and the venture fund may not be in their jobs when this investment is realized.
I was just asking our producers this, like, when did VCs start investing in SpaceX?
2006. Well, the Elon used his own money.
Wikipedia says.
Okay, it's possible that founders
fund. And when did they start investing in Tesla?
2004, I think. So yeah, those are 20-year journeys. So now one of them went public very early. Tesla went public early.
Right.
SpaceX hasn't. SpaceX is still I think Elon has publicly described SpaceX as a furnace, a money-burning furnace. Yeah. So yeah. I think that, I guess they're probably counting Elon's investment as the first investment. And then I think shortly after Founders Fund did it, Luke Nosset gets credit for that. So yeah.
It's not our model. Doesn't really. It's moot for us in terms of Spinlaunch, although come on This Week in Climate Startups, certainly at a minimum, and tell me all about.
Yeah. Could be the next, also could fit in the next unicorns too.
It could be like a be bold. It's a be bold.
For sure. All right. Got a great week coming up. Tons of great stories. We got through one day. We got through Monday. 20% of the way there or so.
We're just waiting to see what the heck is going to happen tomorrow. But either way, you know what? We'll be here for you.
Yes.
And you will not hear our insights anywhere else.
No.
So
we'll
there
work
you
through
go.
it slowly but surely.
Exactly. See you tomorrow.
All right, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.